November 24th, 1991 would be a day that shook the rock world. Not one but two rock stars would pass away, Queen frontman Freddie Merucry and Kiss's drummer Eric Carr. Of course, the Queen frontman's passing garnered a lot more media coverage, angering fans and the surviving members of Kiss. But today, let's take a look at the life and death of Kiss's Eric Carr. Born in 1949, Eric Carr took a liking to the drums at a pretty young age, and he would tell interviewer Thomas Valentino in 1989, "I started playing in '64 when the Beatles came out. Music became my life, and I got attached to Ringo and the drums. And from then on, I really didn't want to do anything but play drums, and be in a band, and be famous. I formed a band when I was 16, and we played bar mitzvahs and weddings. We played disco, top 40, rhythm and blues, and that kind of stuff," he would say. Carr soon expanded to learning other instruments, becoming proficient in bass, piano, and guitar, and he would reveal in an interview that was published on KissRocks.net that he played in two bar bands prior to joining Kiss, one from 1965 to 1969, and another from 1970 to 1979. By 1980, Kiss's classic lineup was falling apart. Drugs, alcohol, and runaway egos resulted in both guitarist Ace Frehley and drummer Peter Criss leaving the group in the early part of the decade. Criss would be the first member to leave in 1980, with Frehley following a few years later in 1982. Eric Carr would recall hearing about Kiss auditioning drummers from a bandmate of his, and was able to get the contact information for Kiss's management and put in a request for an audition. He would tell Valentino, "They said send in a tape of your playing, a picture, and a resume. I sent in a bright orange folder because I figured that there would be so many of these on the secretary's desk that maybe, just maybe, I'll attract her attention." Sure enough, that's what happened. She saw my folder and grabbed it first. They called me and I went the next day to meet manager Bill Aucoin. He gave me a list of songs to learn for the audition. In the event that I was called for the audition, he told me I should have my mustache shaved off because they didn't want to see me in my mustache. I spent the rest of that day learning the 5 songs, he would say. Carr would get the gig replacing drummer Peter Criss in 1980, just ahead of the band recording their much maligned record, 1981's Music from the Elder. Despite that setback though, Carr was cited by some as being the shot in the arm that Kiss needed, who were going through a commercial slump in their career. He would play on 7 of the band's albums, many of which went gold and platinum. Carr would admit in interviews that given Kiss's loyal fan base, he was prepared to receive some hate, but other than the occasional sign that read, "We love Peter," fans were pretty good towards him, he'd say. There was even talk of Eric Carr releasing a solo album similar to what Kiss did in 1978 with each of their members. He would tell an interviewer that KissRocks.com published, where he said the following, "At some point there was once a real possibility of doing solo albums, all 4 of us, just like they did in 1978. This was in 1981. We took it only as far as getting the album cover art done, so they paid the same painter who did the original ones, and he painted the portrait of me with the light behind me exactly the way it would have been if it were released," he'd say. After more than a decade of being in Kiss, Carr in February of 1991 started to feel ill. He would visit a doctor who would run medical tests, which revealed that he had some manageable health issue. However, it soon came to light that he had several tumors in his heart. By April of 1991, Carr underwent several surgeries to remove the tumors from his chest and lungs to stop the cancer's growth. While dealing with his cancer diagnosis, Carr would end up being replaced by drummer Eric Singer, and band leaders Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley reiterated to Carr that he would be welcomed back into the group once his health improved. The band soon commenced work on their follow-up album Revenge, and as they readied to shoot a video for their single God Gave Rock and Roll to You, Carr was able to convince Simmons and Stanley to let him appear in the video. Carr would fly to Los Angeles in July of 1991, and since he had lost a lot of his hair due to chemo, he was wearing a wig in the video. Following the shoot, Carr would fly back home to New York to continue with his cancer treatments, but sadly his health took a turn for the worst, resulting in the drummer being unable to play the drum tracks for Revenge. He would only be alive for several more months and would pass away at the age of 41. Here's an MTV report covering his death and his final few months.
Kiss drummer Eric Carr died of cancer at age 41 in a New York hospital. Last May, Carr was diagnosed with a heart tumor, which ultimately spread to his lungs. His last public appearance was at the 1991 MTV Video Music Awards in September. 2 days later, Carr suffered a brain hemorrhage and had been hospitalized ever since. Carr replaced original Kiss drummer Peter Criss in 1979 and had been recording with Kiss until a few months ago. The band ultimately hired one-time cult drummer Eric Singer to replace Carr.
Given that Queen frontman Freddie Merucry passed the same day as Carr, Kiss's drummer didn't receive that much media coverage. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, meanwhile, would pen an open letter to Rolling Stone in January of 1992, slamming the magazine and the media over their lack of coverage of Carr's death, stating in their letter that the drummer was, and I quote, someone who lived and believed in the spirit of rock and roll, and declared that, and I quote, we loved him, the fans loved him, and he will never be forgotten. The group's 1992 album Revenge would be dedicated to Carr, and the closing track, Carr Jam 1981, is a demo the drummer had recorded soon after joining the group in the early 80s. In the eyes of some Kiss fans, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons acted unfairly to Carr by kicking him out of the band while he was undergoing cancer treatment. Even some members of Carr's family made their feelings known to Stanley and Simmons during his funeral service. Even Carr's girlfriend at the time of his death, Carrie Stevens, with whom he had been in a relationship with for several years, would slam Paul Stanley after he released one of his books where he was critical of Carr, and she even urged fans not to buy the book. Stanley and Simmons, for their part though, claimed that they did what they thought was best for the drummer at the time, while also paying tribute to him on the anniversary of his death in 2020. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like button and subscribe. We'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.